Okay, we're about to begin. Before we do, I'm just going to introduce myself. So I'm Claire. I'm the founder of Only With Love, which actually began here 6 years ago when I traveled to Raleigh for the conference. And I came not knowing how I was going to develop my ideas, but I spoke to, one of the people I spoke to was Heather Massey. And I said to her, I'm thinking of beginning Only With Love. It had enormous importance to me with OWL, the acronym. And I spoke to her about it. And the next morning at breakfast, she announced me as Claire of Only With Love. And so it began. So I feel extremely honored to be here. Today, my sponsor is Yuli Som from Ballacouche in the UK. Yuli is an amazing woman. She's a felt maker. She lives on the edge of Dartmoor. She works in wool. And we have her shrouds. I'm going to pass this around. So this is an example of one of her shroud cocoons. You may have seen beautiful photos of these. We actually do have a full-size one at the back, which is going to be going to New York after this, so that's amazing. So I'm going to pass this around for you. Yuli also makes these winged cocoons for babies, so I'm going to pass this around to you as well. And she also makes beautiful bags, which I keep the Techni ice in. In England, we have a home death care pack, and that's part of it as well. So it's extremely honouring to be able to share her work, and also with Jerry Grace, because Jerry Grace and I also have an amazing connection, which began in 2009, and since then we've worked together both in the UK and here. We've shared home funerals together, we've shared workshops together, we're great friends. This week we've shared Ed Sheeran together, where we met him in Washington, DC, so we've got lots of amazing connections. But today, Jerry Grace is here to actually share her mum. So 3 weeks ago, her mother died, and we're going to begin by sharing the care that she offered her mother as an introduction to our caring for our own. So, thank you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm really honored to be here again. I've been at this for about 22 years now, and it was very lonely at first. And now there's all of you and many more, and that's so heartwarming. It's such a blessing. And I was also blessed to be with my mom at the end of her 97 years. 97 almost and a half. And 3 weeks ago, she took flight. And Claire has given me the blessing also of being able to debut this really quick slideshow we threw together because we haven't had much time since she died. But it's the beginning of preparing for her memorial, which will be in November. So quickly, because I don't want to spend too much time on this, so we have a lot of body work to show you today. Body care. Yeah, my mom's name is Rose, and where's the little thing? Oh, there it is. Here we go. And so I don't want to get into many details about this, except to tell you that her parents were born in Russia. They ran from the pogrom in the late 1800s. They emigrated, huge mass of Russian Jews immigrated to China and landed in Harbin area. This is where my mother was born. She was the fourth child of the family, and she was born and raised there and didn't come to America until she was 17. She went to a French Catholic convent there and learned English and French, as well as her native Russian language. And so I'm just going to quickly go through her life pictures without sharing anything about them. much, and I'll just say a few, like a word or two, and then we'll get to her death and care at that point. So, Mom's, we played the Threshold Choir CD a lot for my mom. This particular CD is called Walking Each Other Home, and I played that for her a lot in the last few weeks. Plus, had the Threshold Choir come and sing with me. I'm part of the choir, and we sang together for my mom. So, her name is Rose, and here she is. She was very colorful, as you can see. She just loved glitz and said, I want to be known as Glitzy Rose. It's her sister, brother, mother. The youngest one with the bow is my mom. Big bows were, I guess, big then. Her parents. That's her cousin she grew up with that she was very close to, and her cousin's name was Lily. She loved fashion. My dad. And again, her cousin Lily and their husbands, my dad. She had a wig salon. She had many hair salons and a wig salon. She was a hairdresser for 40-something years. She loved to, she could do everything with her hands. She sewed and she made costumes, and my dad and her were in organizations doing many different costumes. Pirates and and then she, after my dad died, she took up square dancing. Those are her grandsons. Then she traveled the world with my dad and after he died, and she went to all over Israel, Egypt, all over Europe. It's my daughter, my grandson, me, Mom. And my sister has another home up in Vancouver Island. That's it. And we took Mom every summer. And this is in Victoria. She loved to eat crab. It's my sister and her grandson. And so they got her big bowl of crab. After my dad died, she met this man and lived with him for 16 years. And then she moved out at some point when he had Alzheimer's, and she moved out into an independent living in a facility. And there's my friend Daphne, who is her really good friend. In fact, that picture of Daphne and her mom when she died was in the last film. This is the last stop here, was a 6-person care home. This is where she died, and this is back in February is when we moved her there. So this is the last 6 months of her life. Oops. Oh well. Anyway, that's her in her final weeks. And I'd walk in the room sometimes and she'd be asleep but smiling. So I took pictures of her laying there just smiling in her sleep. There's another picture of her smiling in her sleep. So this is right after she died. We brought her to my home, and you can see that we tied the ace bandage, we call it, around her chin. I used a washcloth underneath that. Her mouth was wide open when she died. And we see a lot of transformation in people when we work on them. I've helped nearly 400 families and with home funerals. And we usually see a smile appear on their face in the first couple of days. And we see a lot of transformation just from the care, the loving care they get. But I have never seen as much transformation as I did with my mom. So you've seen her in bed, you see her here. And after my sister and I washed her, she just, to me, looked so very different. She looked like, both my sister and I kept going, who is this woman? We don't recognize her. She looked so different to us. So that was, we washed and dressed her, just my sister and I. And we caressed her a lot over the next couple of days. She loved purple. That's obviously, you can see, this is decked out in purple. And we had the threshold quiet. That's my sister and her daughter. So my niece was there. And that's the ice on top of her. So we used dry ice, and it was record temperature that day of the wake. It was about 112 degrees in Sebastopol, and we didn't have air conditioning. So my mom stayed nice and cool. She was a very cool cucumber there. And as you can see, it looks like she's smiling, which is what families tell us all the time. They are always telling us, look, it looks like they're smiling. And we're like, yeah, amazing, huh? And so we just put some ice under her and a piece of dry ice on top of her. She was chilled, we were hot. And that's us singing to her. And then we put her in the casket. And then she had wanted to be cremated in this pink outfit, which my sister and I couldn't believe because she loved color so much. But we did anyway. And we put it over her before we took her to the crematorium. And at the end of the cremation, when we went back to witness the sweeping of the ashes and the bones, the whole oven was sparkling with red sparkles. It just kept sparkling. It just kept going off like these red lights all over the inside of the brick. And the guy who ran the crematorium, we said, have you ever seen that before? And he said, once in a while. He said, I think it's from the synthetic clothing. And I thought, that's why Mom wanted to wear that. So she would send off sparkles for us at the end. And James is our next door neighbor and landlord, Linda and James. And James, I asked him if he would paint a rose on her casket. And so he did. And that was done in his studio. And then my sister's grandsons, great-grandsons of my mom, were working on the box. And that's their contribution there. And so that's kind of the end. Oh, this was her 97th birthday. So that was just in April. And that's what she looked like that day. And then my daughter was in Uganda at, she's a birth doula but studying to be a midwife now, birth midwife. And she was in Uganda doing a study for her class and with her friend Rebecca. And when I texted her that her grandma had died, she went looking for flowers, and she went to the flower market, and there she is holding the flowers. She said the only the only roses that they had at the flower market were sterling roses. And which is uncommon. I mean, to see purple roses, and my mother's maiden name is Sterling. So she said, I know Grandma's here in Uganda with me. So she bought the sterling roses and the lilies, and she took them to the Baha'i temple to do prayers there. It's the only one on the continent there in Africa. And it happened to be in the city where she was. And then she went home. She went to Paris and then came home. But my mom loved Paris too, so she had a great time there. Anyway, that's the end. The lilies and the roses, there's a story. My mom said she was in jail 3 times in her life. And the second time was in China, and she and her cousin that you saw in the picture, his name was Lily, and they got a telegram from a friend. They were going to a wedding, and the telegram said, we need roses or lilies for the wedding, and they went and looked for roses, and they sent a telegram back saying, oh, no roses, only lilies. And they took the lilies to the wedding, and on the way back, the Japanese who had moved into China had a stop point, and they found the telegrams, and because my mom's name was Rose and her cousin's name was Lily, they thought, and they had a picture of them on a bridge, they thought they were spies and they were going to blow up the bridge. So they threw them in jail, and they had to stay there overnight until they got it all straightened out. But so that was the story of roses and lilies in our family that's gone on forever, and that's the reason Jenna bought roses and lilies at their flower market. There you go. So funny. Okay. So I can get rid of this. Let's go.
So families are obviously our strongest connection, and for me in particular, I find this whole connection and relationships and trust the most beautiful part of a home funeral. And today I was reminded that on this day in 2008, my father was diagnosed as being terminal, and from there my journey with him began. And I very quickly realized once we'd had that diagnosis. Thank you. I was just saying, on this day in 2008, my father was diagnosed as being terminal, and I very quickly realized with my 4 children who were staying with him at the time in New Zealand that we couldn't change the outcome, but we could change the journey. And I never knew at that point how it would evolve, but it has continued to, and I feel him with me to this day. My great-grandmother on my mother's side was also one of the Yorkshire women in England who used to be called on to lay out the dead in a front room, and also to be there at birth. So I feel this comes through me. And in most home funerals that we do, I feel I'm there present, but actually there is so much more than we can ever understand. And Jerry Grace and I were blessed in England in 2014. Jerry Grace and Mark arrived on the Tuesday. I was working with a family. The man had died on the Saturday night. They were Buddhists, and they didn't want his body to be touched for 3 days. So as soon as Jerry Grace arrived, we headed to London very early that morning, and we cared for Peter's body for 7 hours. So as we go through today talking about caring for a body, we may refer to our work with Peter because it was incredibly beautiful and honouring for both what we believe for both him and also for his wife, who had been caring for him for 15 years. She hadn't been able to wash his hair during that time in the last months of his life, and that in particular was a very, very special thing for her, and we're going to demonstrate that for you now. So Sarah's going to come and be my model.
And Jean is going to come and be my model.
Use this
over here.
I'm just going to pass these round as well. Jerry Grace, if you'd like to pass around, that's an example of a cardboard coffin that I bought from the UK, just so that you can see. Can I give you these? Okay. When I'm working with a family, one of the most beautiful invitations I think we have to begin is a one washcloth. And Lynn is here, I think. Is she? Yeah, there she is. She is one of the creators of one washcloth alongside Susan and Rochelle. And I'm going to read you this because we give this out as a as a personal invitation to a family in hospice or in our community.
Can you hold the mic when you do that? So, because it,
Sorry.
yeah, over the bell.
This cloth is a gift. Please use it to care for your loved one who has died as a final act of love. You may use it to gently wash your loved one's face, hands, and body as you would have in life. Follow your instincts. There is no right way. There is no rush. And you may keep this cloth as a tender reminder of the love that you gave at the end. And I'm going to start now by just reading a prayer. So I would like you to, if you would be comfortable to close your eyes, please do. If you don't want to just watch what we're doing, then please feel free as well. But I think it actually is a very beautiful beginning. It's called the Prayer of Faith. It's in the book Home Funeral Ceremonies, which is written by Katie Ann and Donna, who are both members and ex-board members now of NHFA. We trust that beyond absence there is a presence, that beyond the pain there can be healing, that beyond the brokenness there can be wholeness, that beyond the anger there may be peace, that beyond the hurting there may be forgiveness, that beyond the silence there may be the word, that beyond the word there may be understanding, and through understanding there is love. And in trust and in beauty and in love we will begin.
Is there another towel? I don't know where the other hand towel went.
You can take.
I guess I'll just use this one for now. Yeah. I don't know where the other one went. All right. That's good. All right.
So we're going to imagine that our models here are our family members, and we're welcoming them into this space, which is very honouring. And we're going to start by closing, if their mouth is open, by closing their mouth. So Sarah, if you wouldn't mind just opening your mouth. And as you saw in the film, oh.
I'm gonna do it this way.
Oh, sorry, Sarah, I didn't mean to pull your hair with the Velcro. I'm not going to tie it too tight because...
I'm not going to tie it at all. I don't think. Well, maybe a little.
Yeah.
Maybe just a little.
So we do this to begin because this will, if we're working with a body before rigor mortis begins, which is in the first 2 hours after death, that we can set the jaw. And with Peter, it was several days, but we were actually still able to do it. So it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that it's easier if you do it in the first couple of hours. Yeah. And so that's how we would do it. Some people also like to use a rolled towel and place it underneath the chin. And then with the eyes, we've got 2 different examples here. So this is, and Jerry Grace has got one of these as well, just a simple eye mask which has been made with rice, which we could use to cover, and that may be enough. Sometimes when I'm working with a body,
Okay?
particularly if it's very close after death, actually my fingers is all I need. And I have worked with a family before where they've been doing the caring of the body, and I have simply just used my fingers, placed my fingers underneath the chin, and then my thumbs on top of the eyelids, and that's all we've needed. So again, you can be flexible, you can do whatever feels right for you. Jerry Grace has a very good technique for eyes, so I'm going to let her also show you that with a cotton bud.
And I also want to just say, as Claire just mentioned, that some people want the mouth to remain open and some people want eyes to remain open, and it's always the family's choice.
Yeah.
So I always ask them, do you want their mouth closed? Do you want their eyes closed?
One of the things I didn't mention too is in terms of mouth care, if the mouth is open, it may be that you can use oils such as peppermint or lemon or thieves oil, which we've got some up here we can pass around if you haven't smelt it before, and clean the mouth out. And with Peter in particular, this was one of the areas that we needed to be very, very careful with him because he needed a lot of mouth care, and we used one of these and cleaned his mouth out with this as well.
A lot of times.
Can we ask little small questions in between this? or no?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, or do we want to wait till the end?
I mean, I just wondered why he needed mouth care.
Well, I was just about to say.
Okay, yeah.
I was just about to say that he had been breathing through his mouth a lot toward the end of his life.
He also they hadn't been able to do any mouth care on him for a while, and he actually had died of a chest infection. So there was a lot of
Mucus,
yeah.
dried mucus.
Or there could be food in there.
There can be food in there, and so it can freshen the breath. Yeah, if their mouth is open, take advantage. You can use a toothbrush, or you can use the sponge. You can put peppermint oil on it, swab it out.
Remind us again, how many days had his body been untouched before your arrival?
Well, this was the Wednesday, and he died on the Saturday night.
It's a long time.
So we're passing around the thieves oil. Thieves is an amazing antibiotic, and we use
Natural.
Natural, yeah, and we use it a lot in terms of
It's
caring for
it's a natural antimicrobial, fungal, bacterial, all that. So we prefer to use as many natural products as we can. So I use Young Living essential oils, but there are many kinds of oils that you can use. That one in particular is used for bacteria, and it also smells like Christmas. So many people love, because it has cloves and cinnamon in it, and everybody loves it, so nobody usually minds us putting it in the basin of water that we're going to wash the body with.
What about dental, like bridges and things like that?
Yes, my mom had a partial, and we did put it in after she died. She hadn't been wearing it in the final weeks, which is really common. It becomes uncomfortable and cumbersome. And so she wasn't wearing it, and then after she died, we put the partial in, which made her mouth shape look more even, because she was missing quite a few teeth. And so...
That right away before you tried.
Yes, before...
If I waited too long one time, we couldn't get the mouth open.
Yes, because rigor had set in. Yes.
Sometimes even if there's a little sort of space, you can use one of the droppers to drop some oil in as well. And I'm going to pass this one round too. This I've brought from the UK, which is 24 karat gold oil. It also has frankincense and myrrh within it. Frankincense from heaven, myrrh from earth, and gold for life. It can be used in the final days when somebody is dying. It's very comforting, very calming. And we're also going to use it today for anointing. But one of the connections with this is in January, I had a funeral for a grandmother, and Yuli actually made one of those covers to go on top of the coffin. And her granddaughter chose it for her and has decided to keep that cover now as a family heirloom. And she is also the person who's made this oil. So I just love the way that all of this is connected and the energy just keeps going. So.
Great question. How long does it take the gel to set, and how long do you keep it going?
Generally, we would keep it for just a couple of hours, but I mean, everybody is different, and it does depend on when you begin. You know, if it's in that the first sort of short time after death, then it generally sets quite quickly. With Peter, his jaw was actually open, and Jerry Grace worked very carefully on his jaw, massaging oil, and we actually
We're able to
were
get
able
it
to
closed a lot of the way, not all the way, but a lot of it. And
Yeah.
you can prop.
And she's going to show you now with the cotton bud, but we did this with his eyes as well, and his eyes had been open all that time because when he died, his wife was looking into his eyes, and she actually said to him, now you no longer belong to me, you belong to the universe. And he took his last breath and he died. And so it was really, he had the most amazing blue eyes, and she wanted to keep looking at those. But after a few days, his eyes had begun to sink, and they'd begun to change. And at that time, she was ready for them to close. And again, we were able to moisturize his eyelids to the point where, with Jerry Grace's help, we were able to close, both bringing his bottom lid up and his top lid down.
So the first thing I do is put some lotion on the eyelids so that you can moisten them. When people are very dehydrated from not eating or drinking, the lids become very thin and taut. They're kind of like a rubber band, and if you try to close them with your finger, they just open again. So by placing lotion on the lid, it helps moisturize and thicken them a little bit so they're a little more fleshy, like your own. And then you can take the cotton off the end of a cotton bud, as they say in the UK, or Q-tip, as we often say here, or cotton swab. And I just take the cotton off the end of it and I roll it into a little, there we go, just a little piece of yarn. It just looks like a little piece of yarn, like a long kind of thing. And you try to make it even as you can. And then, of course, I'm not going to do this to my model, but you would take the eyelid and just lift it away from the eye and tuck it right underneath the eyelid and then bring it down over the top. And now it has something that's abrasive a little bit instead of, it's glossy finish there of the eyeball. And it just adheres to the cotton a little bit and will close and stay closed, and also helps round out the eye because it gets very flat when a person is dehydrated. So this makes it nice and round and looks very natural, and is certainly, I feel it's a good alternative to the plastic eye cups that funeral directors stick under the eyelid that have little barbs in them. And then they pull the lid over these plastic eye cups. So this is just a very natural, easy way to do it. And it works beautifully.
And
we were able to get Peter's eyes closed.
Yeah. And one of the other amazing things too is that you don't need to buy anything special. You just use what you already have in your home, whether it be oils or creams.
Most people have the ACE bandage in somewhere in their home, and certainly these. Yeah, almost everything we use is something you have in your house. That's right.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm curious about why you put a towel under the chin. Because
You haven't done that before. Well, I don't always do it. I don't always do anything. Everything is, you adapt in the moment. And it really depends on the shape of the person's chin. It also is softer to put under the chin It doesn't look so much like when you pull it tight that you're strangling the person, under their neck. And so this softens that. It cushions. It's like a cushioning. And it also closed my mom's mouth better than without. So depending, I also, if you notice, I use a wide ace bandage because that way it is suitable for any size chin, any size person. You can have a really large person or a really small person, and you can just fold it to adapt to whatever size they are. So.
And these tend to work better than a silk scarf, which tends to be quite slippery. But if you want to, you can then use a scarf around if you wanted to make it look more beautiful.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't say about the one washcloth, which we're about to use now, is Lynn has very kindly brought in a sample for you all to take home. So we're passing one round now, but there is one also for you to take. They're changing their style of their bags, so they're happily going to give out. Hopefully we have, at the back door. Okay.
Yeah. So I took it
Yeah,
off.
I'm going to take this off now.
The other thing is some people have said that they want to keep the eyes open because they love looking at their person's eyes, and I just like to inform people what to expect in the future of whatever's going on, so there's no surprises, no shocks, and their eyes will change. That look of the eye will change over the next couple of days. And I tell them that's fine if you get to a place where you're uncomfortable with how the eyes look, we can close them. Or if you want to keep them open, you may. But at least let them know that the body's going to go through some changes over those next couple of days.
And after you've set the jaw, as Jerry Grace said, often in the next day or so, a smile appears. So although you've actually set it closed, it may still change. And that
It usually does.
one of the people that I helped care for was a man who had died of a sudden heart attack in hospital, and he'd been kept in hospital mortuary for 3 weeks before we cared for his body. And in fact, his wife has written about the experience on my banner there, but one of the things was that when we cared for his face and his body, after we did that, even after 3 weeks, we all saw a change in that he looked actually more relaxed. And that's what we see often, and people tend to look a lot younger and a lot better when they've been cared for, which is very affirming and very comforting for the families.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just going to
How long do you keep the ace bandage around to set the mouth closed?
it does depend, but usually a couple of hours is enough to set.
2 to 4 hours is the usual time that rigor mortis sets in, and you can easily feel if you just take your fingers and feel if the jaw won't move. You can try to open it and it's set, so then you know you can take it off. Doesn't mean that it won't open over the next couple of days. If you have a long wake, the mouth may start to open, and you can do something about that, but it isn't going to set again. Rigor mortis does leave the body after a number of hours. And in that case, some people's mouth does start to open a bit the second or third day. With my mom's, her mouth opened quite a bit. So we used dry ice. I rolled it in a washcloth and then tucked it, we used a big chunk of it and pushed her mouth closed, and then we just put a scarf around her neck to cover that. So, you wouldn't know it was there.
Generally, as guides, we're there to actually help the families. So the families are the ones who are washing, and usually what will happen is that they will feel very comfortable once they begin. If they have any initial fears, once they've touched their person and they know it's okay, generally the family will just take over. But often I find personally that the families tend to like to start with the feet. I know Jerry Grace doesn't often do that, but I've found
It's
that
up to
people...
the family.
It's up to the family, but the families that I have worked with generally like to start with the feet. I think it just is something, maybe gives them a little bit of distance to begin with. It's very grounding. And so we would take in a bowl, sometimes, hopefully, if you've got any herbs in your garden, rosemary or lavender, we use thieves, any of the oils or any washing. These Dr. Bronner's I tend to use a lot of as well. Tend to use anything organic as much as possible because, as well, you don't get so many suds from a practical point of view, especially with shampoo. So we would fill up a bowl and we would begin by just washing the body. Sometimes a body actually doesn't need washing for cleanliness, but it is an act, it's a ritual and a ceremonial act, and sometimes it does need it for cleaning. So again, it's all very much individual. So I'm just going to obviously just imagine now, because we don't have any water here, but if you can just imagine we're going to be just washing and drying as we go. If you're using the oils, one of the wonderful things about the oils is that they're very calming for the people who are doing it as well. So it's not just of benefit to the person who's died, but also to the person who is able to offer that care. So we would be washing, and the arms.
This act of washing the body is probably the most intimate part of the home funeral, and is a way that people can have that tactile care, that loving care of the body. It was extremely wonderful to have my sister wash my mom's hair. I started the process, and we're going to show you about hair, but just the act of having that contact gives people an opportunity to pour their love into this person's body, and often they're still very much there. Everyone feels their energy. And depending on whether they've been left untouched for 3 days or you're going to begin the washing soon after they die.
And every act feels sacred, so the most simple acts often seem so incredibly beautiful, and as if time has no sense for us. One of my closest friends, the last time when I came to NHFA conference, her mother died suddenly just before I left, and so she asked me if I would come back early and to help care for her mother, and we did that actually in a funeral director's room, and she'd had a post-mortem, but we were still able to care for her there, and we washed her hair. And for my friend Dawn, that was an incredibly beautiful experience, and we blow dried her hair and we washed it within the embalming room. And actually when we walked into that room, it was filled with the most sterile, the smell, all of it was quite foreign to us, and we covered everything with beautiful cloths. We had oils burning. We made it an incredibly beautiful, sacred space as much as we could, and everything else in beauty and love just took over. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to care for the person in the home. Sometimes it may be in a hospital, sometimes it may be in a nursing home, sometimes it may be within a funeral director's.
When I go to a family to be their guide, I usually take a basin and a whole stack of washcloths and hand towels, different size towels, because often their linens, their towels are in the laundry. They haven't had time to keep up with wash because they've been so focused on the care of their beloved. So it's good to be prepared. And also, I never know how many people are going to participate in the washing of the body. So it's very, very often I'm just there maybe handing the first washcloth to someone, and they begin the washing, and then other people we can hand washcloths to 4 or 5 people to be washing parts of the body. Other people are taking the hand towels and patting them dry. So everybody feels like they're participating. And usually people go through this very slowly. No one's in a hurry. And we often have music playing during that time, if the family would like that.
Last year, I traveled to New Zealand for workshops. And when I got to Singapore, I rang to say, in fact I got a phone call to say that my friend that we were going to stay with, where the workshop was going to be, won't be there because her father was dying. And we arrived and I went to bed, and the next morning I went down to the nursing home where she and he were, and I hadn't been back for 5 years. And I literally, this is how it worked. He died and then I walked in. And it was the most incredible, again, timing, because he could have died at any point in those 5 years. But as it was, because I was coming for workshops, I had everything with me. And so we then cared for him in the nursing home. And one of the things that we were able to do was to invite one of his carers within the nursing home to be involved as well. So it was the daughter, the son-in-law, and the carer. And I was just there, as Jerry Grace was, just to guide them. But they knew, and this is the one thing that I think I would say to anybody, is that we all know all of this is within us. It's very natural, it's very normal. And one of the things when you give somebody the one washcloth is we're all familiar with a simple cloth, that actually when you see that, you know that you can do it. And we're just there as a really gentle reminder. There are some very good tips though, which we're going to show you now on how to wash hair in a bed. And you will have seen it in the last video as well.
I saw a hand over there.
Well, I just have a question about, have you ever come across anyone who doesn't want their body to be washed?
Yeah.
And why? And also, what's the line between what kind of is recommended, obviously ought to get done, I guess, and what is considered more the sacred, the ritualistic aspect of it?
I mean, if it's an expected death and families have been caring for that person before they've died, then they will have been regularly cleaning and caring for that person anyway, and they will be very aware of when the last time they washed them were, for example. I've just worked with a family, or just guided a family, where they were Quakers, and actually for them, they didn't do any washing of his body, but he died on the Monday night and he was cremated on the Saturday morning, and they simply, what was important for them was just to sit in silence and presence, and that's what the family did for 5 days, and that was what was right for them. And again, this is what we will say, as families, you know what is right for your own, and if they need, sometimes you do run into challenges, and we often ask, what would love do in this situation? I mean, if clearly the person has passed a bowel motion, then they need to be washed, and they need to be washed well, because particularly around the genital area, which we haven't shown yet, is that, there can be odor. So again, you have to deal with what you have in front of you, and sometimes it can change. It's about being open to that.
The bladder will always empty what's in it when a person dies. And if they're catheterized, that's not going to be an issue. But if they are not, then there's going to be odor if they don't wash them. So again, at the top of my list is always inform the family of what to expect. So if they don't want to do a full body washing, they may just want to clean up the urine and around that area if they don't want those odors. And again, part of that depends on how long the person's going to be lying in honor. So if they're going to be there 3, 4, 5 days, which very, very often the families that I work with do want these long vigils. So in that situation, it's really nice to have them cleaned up. I've never had a family not want to bathe their loved one. Doesn't mean that I might not, but and not always the full body, but at least that part.
I'm also thinking wishes of the person who is deceased.
Right.
Whether they wanted that ritual to be done on them. So part of this is like the benefit of the family to feel like there's something's happening for them. And I think about, well, how much of that person, of their death, do they want to be like, is it their responsibility to benefit their family, by letting them be watched, so. I mean, that's personal, right now, I think.
It's why it's helpful to discuss this with if it's possible.
Yeah.
If their mind is clear and they're able to have that discussion, it's really nice to have those things clarified.
And then we haven't got one of these pads underneath, but we would put a waterproof, what do you call these here?
Chucks.
Chucks, yeah.
Chucks.
So we could have this on the bed as well.
Yeah. When I'm draping a massage table, and the reason I like using massage table to wash a body is, one, people can gather all the way around it, and two, you can raise it up to the level so that people aren't bending down and hurting their back. Most standard beds are low. So it really helps, even if they're going to be moved back to their bed, it really helps to use a table or a hospital bed even, that you can raise up, so that people are not going to injure their backs.
Okay, so we're going to now show you how to wash hair. So I'm just going to gently lift up Sarah's head.
Okay. I'm going to have to
I'll just pop
use...
it down.
I'm going to have to use this towel. One of the first things that we do when we're getting ready to wash the body is, well, of course, if they have clothes or a gown or anything on, we take that off and cover their privates. Just, again, unless the family doesn't want that. But most of them appreciate that sense of privacy, even though you're going to be taking it down to wash those parts. At least there's that sense that they're not just laying there without anything over them. So right now I'm going to borrow this to use for washing the hair.
So I've rolled my towel and simply make it into like a horseshoe shape, which I'm going to place underneath Sarah's neck. One of the things that actually is quite surprising when you're working with the body is how heavy the head actually is. And usually we'd always have somebody at the head whenever we're doing any movement of the body to hold the head as well. Is that comfortable for you?
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's really helpful to have at least 2, if not 3 or 4 people helping to do all of this, so that whenever you're moving the body around side to side, somebody is holding the head during that time, guiding it, and not having it just flop on the table back and forth.
Sometimes if there's going to be any leak, it can come from the mouth. And if you are moving the head, we recommend just using a small washcloth again at the side of the face. And if there's any odor, it often comes from the mouth as well. So that's another reason why it's really good to keep the head as still as possible. These black bags, in England we actually have a real trouble finding these ones with a flat base. And so I travel with them. These have actually come from New Zealand. I travel with them wherever I go now, these flat base ones. So it's just a case of cutting off the corner, one side. And then
you open the bag.
Open the bag. I mean, this can be how you wash somebody's hair while they're still alive as well, in bed. And so, again, I think I said to you about using organic shampoo because there are less suds. But you can see that actually what happens here is that the hair and the head are inside the bag. We've got the corner cut off, so we would have somebody down here with a bucket. And then we were able to pour water with a jug, and then apply shampoo. And again, this massaging, all of this, taking time, talking, blessing, and each part of the body as you're cleaning, when you're closing the eyes, we can bless the eyes for what they've seen, our hands for what they've held. One of the women blessed her husband for that had the hands that did all the cooking. And, again, it's so personal, but it's so beautiful, and taking time. And with Peter, they had in their early years done a lot of traveling, but he had been bedbound for 15 years. And so when we washed his feet, we spent a lot of time, and his legs, and she talked about where those legs had carried him through his life. And it was all about remembering again and reminding, which again is all part of the healing and the sacred part of the process. So we would then, with the hair,
Yeah, it's helpful to have one, while you're washing, maybe somebody else to pour. I mean, you can do it all yourself, and I have, but it's just nice. Again, another way people can be involved. Somebody can be scrubbing, another person pouring the water over to rinse, somebody else making sure that the bottom of the water that runs off, this one is cut incorrectly, but if it's cut across, and this goes into the bucket, and somebody else can make sure all the water drains down into the bucket.
And it works really well. I mean, it works really effectively, so that we actually have no spills. It is such a simple way.
Yeah.
But it does work.
Yeah. It works beautifully.
And then you can use a hairdryer, and you can also use warm water. That was one of the things when I first started, not knowing whether or not I should use warm water on a body, but actually it's fine.
And you can use dry shampoo if you need to, if that's an easy solution for you. It may be also that the person just had their hair washed and they don't want to wash it again, but it is so wonderful. That's one thing about Peter's wife, just loved, because she wasn't able to wash his hair. And there's something about putting your hands through somebody's hair that just feels so incredibly sacred. And
He had long hair too, so.
yes, he did have long hair, yeah. She just wanted to wash his hair for a long time. And it just feels good, I think most of us know how good it feels to have our own hair washed by somebody else, so maybe that's part of it.
And when you've actually washed the body, you can then apply an oil or a moisturizer, and you can continue to do that, because one of the things that happens with a body is that the skin can dry out, and again, reapplying.
And lip balm, because the lips dry out a lot. So keeping lip balm around, and you may have to apply it if they're going to remain at home for a couple of days. You may have to apply it several times.
Yeah, coconut oil I use.
And coconut oil.
Okay, so I'm going to take that away now and give Sarah back her pillow. So now what we're going to do is show you how we would turn a body and wash the back side. Depending on which side you want to move somebody, you would always cross over towards you. So I'm going to move Sarah towards me this way. So I would bring her foot over. Actually, are there a couple of people who would like to help with this turning? Anybody who would like to come and have a try?
You're welcome.
So if you want to come around this side.
So somebody can guide her head, and a couple
Okay, and then
people
if we can bring
come
this
over
arm
here.
over
And
here.
if you want to get a hand under here.
Are we taking our hands underneath? elbow to turn, or just like
No,
this?
just hold her head like that.
So
and if
all
you
we
wanna
would need to
come
do
in.
now is if you would like to use both
There you
hands
go, and
here
grab her
and
shoulder and back behind
here, if you
her.
put hands underneath here.
There you go.
And then when you're ready, if we just turn, if you just pull her
Right,
towards you, I'm going
right.
to hold her head like that.
Bend your
and so you can
knees.
see now that you can
There
easily
you go.
actually come to the back side, in which
Yeah,
case you
so
can use one of these
somebody can
people or
be
somebody on this side can be using
washing
it
the
to wash
back.
all of the back. And this is how you would clean the genital area as well.
Yes.
And then we
At this time.
While you're there, I wonder about bed sores, like, because the fluid is going to flow right to the back body, and if you've got open sores right there, which sometimes for bedbound people, what in God's name do you do with open bed sores?
I cover them with bandages, absolutely. First drying that area, making it clean, and then I carry large bandages.
Like a big gauze.
Yeah.
You could do gauze,
Gauze is
anything
really
that's going to adhere to the body.
Duct tape.
Micropore.
My husband recently passed away, and he had gangrene on up to here. And so what I did was, and he'd lost his legs too. So what I had done was take a chucks.
Talking about a
and
green
put it under
burial, one
here,
of the
and then
things that I
wrapped
can let you
another
know
around
is
the
that
top side just for the drainage and stuff after.
I was asked to care
I've done that for a
with his wife, a very prominent doctor in London, and we went to the hospital in London to care for him in the
can probably
hospital
turn it
mortuary.
back,
Now he was going to be buried in a green burial ground, and when we were there, we took him out of the refrigerator and brought him into a special room. But he actually had still attached to him
Exactly, the same thing across.
the cannulas in his neck, cannulas in his arm, catheter, and all of this plastic. And it's not the first person that I've come across with this either. And so in terms of integrity for a burial ground, if we hadn't have done what we did then, he would have been buried attached to all of that plastic. And I think this is one of the things that, when you are the person who knows, his wife exactly knew, she was there, she knew exactly as he was. And she actually, he had been a Jewish refugee, and she had, in her lifetime career, been helping the refugees and people from the Holocaust. And she said to me at the end that actually she had never witnessed or been part of anything more loving or more tender or more beautiful in her life. And I think that is, it's a feeling, it's so incredibly honouring. And to remove all of that plastic had been, again, something very, very special. And Dawn, my friend whose mother had the post-mortem, we were able to cover that with gauze as well. And actually, if it's your own, you don't think twice about it. Just like when you're a mother, if you're a mother and your child falls over, the way you would tend to a knee or care if they vomited, it's just yours. It just doesn't seem such a big deal. If it's somebody else's, often it does, But we were able to care for that wound, which was the post-mortem wound, which was from here to here, again, very carefully, very gently washing and then covering with gauze. And that's what you can do with the sores. Yeah.
Okay,
Be legally responsible. Let's say you have hospice, and their nurses have been watching catheters and feeding tubes and various things. So the person's died. It could be several hours before the hospice nurse can come and do her bit. Does the family have the legal right to begin to detach everything?
oh yeah.
Without
Yeah.
having to wait for a medical authority to come and do it?
Well,
Jerry
they do
Grace
where I
has
am.
got a pacemaker here.
I took my mom's pacemaker out, but yes, but do know that if you start taking some of the ports and things out, that there may be fluids that come, and they could be difficult to plug up again. So you want to, if you can tape some of that down, like make sure that it's pinched off, or in some way it's not going to, fluids aren't going to continue to come out of a port or any tubes. So otherwise, yes, you can. I mean, people with colostomies and colostomy bags. I mean, the wife was taking care of her husband, and she changed that after he died. She wanted it clean. People are doing all of that during the care, but of course not putting ports in or anything. But yes, and it's easy to take a catheter out too. You just cut the hose and releases the air, and you can just pull it out. You can do all of that, and a lot of people like any of that plastics taken out. But again, just be careful what you pull out and know whether or not it's going to keep leaking. Yeah.
You ever wear gloves?
Yes, and gloves are recommended if you're going to be cleaning any of the orifices. The family, I don't insist that they wear gloves. They've probably been taking care of the person that way without any gloves for who knows, weeks, years. And so then often, again, I'm just handing them the washcloth, and I'm not really doing the washing. But if I'm going to be helping one other person and I'm going to be doing mouth care or cleaning any of the orifices of the body, I definitely put gloves on. And also, if the body comes from a hospital or convalescent hospital or coroners or some facility like that, you don't know what their body might have brought back home with them. So that's another instance in which you might want to wear gloves. If they've been at home and the family's already under the family care, that's a little bit different. So universal precautions is what gloves are called, and it's always good to err on the side of caution if you're not sure what the body's been through and you're the one taking care of some of that cleaning, then it's a good idea to put them on. If the family is doing it, it's up to them. But I provide gloves. I always have a box of gloves there, and if they want to use them, they can.
We're running quite close to time, so I think now we're just going to finish by anointing and laying one of Pia's beautiful covers over the body. I do have the woolen shroud at the back. I also have a bamboo shroud here as well, if anybody would like to see that too. And if there's any time later, I may be able to do a demonstration, but at the moment we're just going to finish now with, would you like to take some of this oil, Jerry?
Oh, what kind of oil is
This
it?
is the frankincense and myrrh.
Mm. Is oils okay on you? Okay. Always good to ask the family. Always good to ask the family if an essential oil that you're going to either place in the water, the bathing water, or on the body. Make sure that the family's okay with that. Some people are very sensitive to even the therapeutic grade essential oils, and so you definitely want to check with them before you do any of that. You can, it can be a very beautiful ceremony to have them take some of the oils, put it on their hands, and place it in different parts of their body. And I usually tell them to do it intuitively. There are certain oils that I use, Young Living oils, which, by the way, we have a little pop-up sale table back there. My little shameless commercial, but in any case, there are certain oils that I will use for protection of the spirit of the person. I will place on the back of the shoulders and the neck, and often frankincense is used to anoint the third eye. There's other oils that can be really placed anywhere, and I just allow the family to smell the different oils and talk about their properties and let them choose which ones they would like.
One thing we haven't mentioned, which we need to, is the techni ice.
Yes.
This is techni ice. This is a way of keeping the body cold. So I know over here you also have dry ice, but this is another form which is really easy to store. It's really easy to post out. All that's required when you receive it and when you need to use it is to immerse it into warm water for about half an hour. I'll pass this around anyway, but you'll see that it's made up of individual pods. So you massage each of those individual pods until they swell, and we actually have one here that we've frozen previously. What you're seeing with Jerry Grace has the one with the writing on. When I order it without the branding. So it's exactly the same.
This is still
It comes in
wet.
from Australia.
How do you get it without the writing?
Yeah. Yeah. So I import it in from Australia unbranded.
Yeah, but you know,
I
we
get
put
it.
them in pillowcases so the writing doesn't ever show, or you can wrap it in a towel. But with the Techni-Ice, you do need to keep an eye on it when it gets, now this one isn't frozen anymore. We had it frozen for a while and now it's not frozen. It still remains full of the fluid, but you dry it off, you wash it and dry it off, and you can put it back in the freezer and use it over and over.
So generally, it's non-toxic, and generally for an average sized person, you would use 4 sheets, 2 underneath and 2 on the top. It just needs to go in the torso area.
Demonstrate as though this one was full. We go here like that.
One,
In a pillowcase.
yeah. Put it on like this. One of the women that we cared for, it was a mother who died, and she died in her daughter's lounge, where 5 years before they had witnessed the birth of her grandson. So it was very much that whole circle of life. And in her final 3 months of her life, she'd been living in her daughter's lounge, and her neighbours, who lived half an hour away in her own home, had been caring for her pot plants and her cats. And on the morning she died, I arrived, they washed her body, and then we shrouded her. We took her in my car back to her own house, where she lay in a shroud for 3 days before the family painted the coffin, put her in the coffin and took her to the natural burial ground. But as we arrived, the neighbours came to let me in. And we talked about, because I put this Techni-Ice, we immersed it in the water in the sink, we put it into the freezer there and then, so we had a supply. It generally takes, it can take several hours to refreeze, but the more time you give it, the better it takes, because it drops to a very, very low temperature. Anyway, her neighbour said, well, hang on a minute, rather than the daughter come twice a day to change the Techni-Ice, let her now have this time with her son, which she desperately needed. He was 5. And so the neighbours, the ones who had been caring for her plants and her cats, became the people who changed the ice. And it was the most incredibly beautiful community experience for them. And that's all that was needed. We had 2 underneath, 2 on top, rotating them twice a day. This works so incredibly well. In England this summer we had 1 week of incredibly hot weather. I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but it was about 35 degrees Celsius. We used Techni-Ice. Another family I know have just used it for 12 days actually. They kept a body at home for 12 days. So I know over here we've talked a little bit about the 3-day. Often in England we're doing it on average for 5 days, because things do tend to take a lot more time there in terms of getting paperwork done, and particularly if it's a crematorium. If it's a burial it can be much quicker, but for a crematorium it generally takes 5 days. And the Techni-Ice works incredibly well.
Claire, I would say the only addition that, it's not a change, it's an addition that I make is, I've found that some of the Techni-Ice at the back of the throat, because there's sometimes fluid, and that's the only other place I've ever really needed it, and it's done the job.
Yeah, you can cut it as well within these pods. You can cut it so it can resize, and it's suitable for a baby or for a child.
And I use dry ice a lot, and that stops all the purge.
Even if you have somebody who is really putrefying.
Right, it stops odors, it stops purge, it stops a lot of that. But not everybody has dry ice availability. So we also have Techni-Ice in our freezer too.
So this is beautiful, pure silk. Pia has bought, and so I'll let her cover. She's the master at that.
We use this in Australia because We get very, very, very hot summers.
Thank you. You know, if you want
And
to sit up and
we
watch
have
this,
slight issue with insects occasionally. So this is a really
Oh, good, you
we
know how
use
to
it
get
for
up.
insects. We've got
Terrific.
flies in summer, so it's really difficult to try to come in someone that also have a little practice. This is one day.
I'm going to start because this is her garment. So what we're going to do is like dress the person first, and then we're going to wrap them in the bamboo shroud. So another great connection that we have is Pia was in London for a while at a natural burial ground. So that's where we met at the opening of that ground. And she was actually in England last Christmas and New Year. So we spent New Year together at my house. So
We had a wild night. A really, really wild night, which meant that we stood in our pajamas at the front door and
watching everybody else.
yeah, it was great.
I have a pub across the road. We just watch everybody in the pub.
Who's volunteering for us today?
I do.
Cool.
Yeah, wonderful.
Will I be able to see how to do it?
Well, you can have a turn. We can swap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's swap.
I think I might take this off.
Yeah, it's hot. And are you okay with your face being, it won't be for very long because it's just so hot, but are you okay with your face being covered?
I can practice dying.
It's meditation. So if anything, I've over-designed this thing. And then the little tie.
This is so beautiful.
Yeah, would not normally be asking you. Why is it hot?
It's the best part about working.
I know, that's what I tell people.
I can't see.
I have a friend who is my regular shroud model, and she says it's the best treatment that she's ever had. It's better than anything she's ever paid for because it's so relaxing. I don't know if it's going to be so relaxing under the heat, but
This one actually just flips that. And there are lots of different sort of ties and veils, but we'll keep it simple so that this one can just go straight into the shroud.
one of the things with these bamboo shrouds as well is that if somebody's at home, they can be shrouded and tied, and then with the Techni ice, just opened, the ice swapped, and then closed up again. And sometimes I have people shrouded during the time that they're at home, and then they either go as a shroud or they go into a coffin as the last part.
That end.
Whoa, so beautiful. I think if we just keep this like show, and then we'll take this off for the other part. Okay.
That's it.
So you wouldn't need to be dressed in anything else.
Cover the head with anything like
Well, that's where with the shroud, you see, if you're laying at home, yeah. So this shroud that I'm going to show you now is made of 100% bamboo. If you were going to carry somebody, it has a pocket. The top of the pocket is like a pillowcase. So at this end, there is an opening, which you slot in a piece of wood as a backboard, which you can also decorate, which is another really nice thing. Write on, decorate however you wish, and you can obviously also decorate this shroud if you want to too. So that becomes a carrier board for comfort, and obviously because we're here, we haven't got that, but so we won't be able to lift her.
Where would the board go?
It would just slot in. There's just like a slot, so you'd put that in first. Yeah. And then the shroud itself is it has one short side and one long side. So this over here is the shorter side. You can probably see that, and that's the side that we start with first. But we begin by covering the feet. And I think what we can do is if I just go through and demonstrate, and then if anybody wants to come up and have a turn, you can have a turn at just seeing how easy it is. So we start by covering the feet. And then the shorter side comes across in a diagonal. So we're going to go onto this corner. Yep, like this. Yep. Okay. And then the other side, the longer side, comes across. And again, there's lots of fabric here, so you can, when you tie it up, it creates its own. Every body has a different shape. It takes on a different shape. It becomes quite unique.
This one.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. Okay, and then some people at home would lay like, you could have the technique inside, and they might just lay in this position. You know, if they want to be seen, you can drape beautiful scarves over as well, if you want to. And then it's just a case of tying. It's got ties and it's got carry handles. Sometimes people like to write notes or blessings, attach them with luggage labels or ribbons to go onto these straps as well. I won't tie that, and then I'll just do the top part. So I would normally cover the whole thing before I start tying it, but just because of the heat, I don't want to cover Lucinda up too much because it is quite warm in there. No, the face. I would normally cover the whole part, yeah. So I'm just going to do this quite quickly now because of the heat. So
It'd be good because they're taking out of the sun.
oh, okay. So this. Actually, so if it was a person who had died, I would do a double cover, but I'm not going to do that with Lucinda just because it is so hot. So we'll just come over with the one. Oh, hang on. No, we need to do the bottom.
Fold in first.
We need to fold in first. Okay, so just like with the feet, this is going to come over, and then we start with the shortest side again. Which was this side, yeah. Mm-hmm. So this comes over, and then this side.
You're right in there.
Yes.
I'm just going to do that so that you okay?
It's very breathable.
Yeah. That's good to know.
Yeah. Handy for a dead person.
A lot of people, as soon as they see the shroud, they like them because they feel that the person is wrapped or cared for or comforted, or it's just softer, you know.
It's an embrace.
Yeah.
Like a slightly.
It's and it's very simple. And this bamboo one is out of anything in the UK, this is the cheapest that we have of any coffin or shroud. So this would be around about 175, give or take with the exchange rate, but about $175 US.
Oh my gosh, it's really cheap.
Yeah, and it's 100% bamboo, and you can cover it. Then, are you okay, Lucinda? It's made by Respect Everybody Shrouds, and then you can decorate all the way down with the ribbons. You know, I don't know. I'm just. Are you okay?
I am okay. It's better than the sun.
Oh, okay, right. Well, just let it just sing out if it's not okay. Let's take some of these and.
Unless I'm completely silent, then I've died.
Just check in every now and then.
Yeah, we'll check in. So these can actually you can slot in the sides if you want to. You can lay them obviously on top, however you will want to do it. So if I just pass these around, if anybody wants to just come and place on, you can take them and just pass one on. You okay, Lucinda?
Yes.
And then you can see, I also do have a bamboo carrying board, but you don't have to have that. If you have the backboard inside, then this is able to carry. And this particular shroud as well now has full authority for cremation as well. And I think that's a worldwide thing that they have. So.
And what do you attach to the things to lower her or carry her?
Okay, so that would be straight through, just with the usual tie, just the usual ties. You okay, Lucinda?
So
They weave with bamboo?
Yeah.
So Claire, with cremation, do they must put the body in a cardboard container?
No, so what they have for cremation is they, obviously it's got that backboard underneath. Then they have what they call a footboard, which is again another piece of plywood with like and then I've got a photo of it, but it's got like an ending for the feet, so the feet sort of slot in, and it's just so that it can be pushed, so that it can be pushed there, and you just would need to make sure that all the ties and ribbons are on the top, and it just goes straight in.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you get the shroud, is the board come?
No, I mean, in the UK, what you would do is you can either go to your local like DIY store and just get a sheet of eco board, and the measurements are such that the boards come in a sheet that can be cut into 3, so which is about the equivalent of about $5 each piece. So it's not an expensive part, and I can send all the measurements. You can order these through me if you wish to, which if you just email me at Only With Love. Thank you. So I'm going to undo now, and then if you guys want to have a turn, or if anybody else wants to model, you're more than welcome. Whoa. Okay.
Resurrection.
I couldn't hear about the gauze sheet that you had. How do you use that?
I use that in Australia to, well, one is this very, very fine veil.
I'm shrouding in a prep room, and it's getting dirty on the feet. So I've got to just get the guys to move and shroud in a chapel or something else.
This against the blue sky is so aesthetic.
Beautiful.
I know, isn't that gorgeous?
Oh,
So you could have, I don't want to lay it just in case there's any.
Cinda, I have to say you took corpse modeling to like a new level.
I don't know. You were really good the other day.
I was talking.